You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
After about a week of waiting, Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final is here. It's time for the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Bet365. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. How are we doing on this Wednesday, Rosie?
Oh, it's game day, baby. After a long wait, I am fairly excited for this hockey game, I guess you could say. What about you? Did the vibe wear off in that long absence or no?
I was excited until I woke up and Zach Phillips, I guess we can call him friend of the show, alerts us of a tweet put out by the CN Towers official Twitter account. They're lighting the CN Tower orange and blue tonight for the Oilers, the final remaining Canadian team. What are we doing?
You know,
Want to host a watch party at the CN Tower too? Let's do that, Rosie.
That tower, man, like when I fly into town or when you're coming down the Gardner or when you're on the water or that blimp or drone that's flying over the skyline at Hockey Night in Canada, it means one thing to me, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, that thing is awe-inspiring. Maybe people that live there are getting, it's worn off on them or they're used to it. But when I see that thing, it's still, like, awe-inspiring. Like, it's so goddamn big. It's such a statement on the skyline. It just means the Toronto Maple Leafs to me. And to light it up in Oiler colors, it's like, what are you doing? Like, it's just kind of, I guess you're trying to like show everyone, hey, we're an ally or some stupid shit like that. But it's just a stupid thing to do. Like, nobody else would you think, not that Edmonton has any landmarks, but do you think if the Leafs were in the final, they would light up in blue and white? Not a chance in hell. And it's just a dumb move. Like, whether you like Toronto Maple Leafs fans or despise them, they are the most passionate fan base in hockey. That's just the way it is. And to light up their tower in another team's colors is kind of sacrilege to me.
I agree. And we got to cut the kumbaya shit. Personally, I think this city is perceived as soft, and this is why people think the city of Toronto and the Maple Leafs are soft. Shit like this is our landmark. Why are we supporting other teams? And you know it's a real debate, and you know I have a real excuse and a way about it. I'm going things is Edna Garrett, like the biggest Leafs troll in the history of Twitter, on Twitter right now, saying it's such pandering. I'm sick of it. They'd rather cut off their heads than cheer for the Leafs if roles are reversed, which is true. Edna, I agree with Edna for once in my life.
I was going to say, wow, Edna, nice take there for a change. And what the hell was I going to say?
The CN Tower being orange and blue.
Yeah, it's Oh, I said earlier in the week, I'm like, you know what? I get why some people would, cheer for the Oilers or despise the Cats enough and their success and the way they go about their business to say I'm on the Oilers train. I'm from Alberta. It's cool to see the Oilers in there, even though I grew up more of a Flames fan. I got nothing against the Oilers. It would be neat to see a Canadian team get a cup again. I get all that, but you don't have to light your tower up in their colors. It's kind of like it's too much. You send out a tweet saying, hey, maybe this is the year Canadian team. Fine, I don't care. But this pandering and this kumbaya, like you said, you don't have to love everything. You don't have to be an ally of everyone. I'm an ally of everyone. Anyone is welcome in my space. Nothing but everyone is true. It's so fucking soft. You cannot like something. You can say, this doesn't do anything for me. This thing over here, it doesn't benefit me in any way. I despise this thing over here. You can say that because you have a brain and you can think for yourself. Anyone who is, I love everyone. Nothing bothers. You're a robot and you don't think for yourself. So this whole in corporations and big outfits are just love doing it. And I get you're a business. You're trying to get everyone's money. But the CN Tower lit up in Oilers colors is stupid and it's annoying. And I'm not even against the Oilers one iota. It's a stupid thing to do and it bothered me too. I thought it wouldn't, but more I thought about it, I'm like, you stupid bastards.
I think even remembering back to when the Montreal Canadiens were in that goofy bubble Stanley Cup Final, whatever that was a couple years ago against Tampa, where they just got hammered. I think they colored the CN Tower red and white, and it wasn't for Canada. It was for the Montreal Canadiens, and I think there's some blue in there too. But
Jeez.
I agree. Like, don't tell me who I can cheer for. I like, if I want to hate both teams, I'll hate both teams. In fact, I think if you're asking me right now, I want McDavid to win the Stanley Cup. I probably prefer Florida wins. It actually makes me feel better as a Maple Leafs fan, knowing the team that took out the Maple Leafs wins the Stanley Cup, because I truly believe and feel the Maple Leafs are the best team in Canada right now. I don't know. It just got my blood boiling when I saw that. I'm like, what are we doing, man? It's so soft. And then we wonder why people think the Maple Leafs are soft, because you tie the two together, I think. And that's coming from an Albertan. You're an Albertan, man. You're a guy that you think CN Tower, you played for the Maple Leafs, you think Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's the perception we're giving, that it's kumbaya, love everyone. Fuck, why don't we get the Blue Jackets colors up there next year?
And like Montreal, like pick another city in Canada. There is not a goddamn chance in hell that any of them does anything with their landmarks that has to do with the blue and white. Maybe a bit of a tweet, but there's not a chance in hell they would reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe the CN Tower is like, let's try to get some people back on our side after, some people think we're the bad guy, or the Leafs Nation is arrogant, or their heads up their ass, or whatever you want to call it. People have lots of different opinions on Leafs fans and the Toronto Maple Leafs, but like, that tower is a statement. It is an FU. It is this over the top monstrosity that is so cool. It inspires awe when you just look at it. It's like my favorite thing in Toronto. And to light it up in Oilers colors, like, you're so dumb. No one would do that for you. You're just pandering. I hated it.
I mean, what's next? The Ripley's Aquarium. We're going to color the water blue and orange. Is that what's up the pike here? Like, I don't know. It's insulting to me. Maybe I got nothing to be pissed about here in the month of June. Anyways, Emilio Beltrano in the chat. Rosie!
What up, Billy? Billy boy. Sweet Billy
Emilio.
boy.
I think Emilio, your guy Emilio.
Oh, that was Emilio?
Yeah, your guy.
Oh, see, I was like, he's doing the Emilio thing, but it's not Emilio. What
It's
up,
Emilio
Emilio?
There you go.
Back and watch that old school movie again. Like that guy.
Our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and 3rd in the world. Now that we got that out of the way, we can talk about the actual Stanley Cup Final, which is finally set to begin. The Oilers hosting the Florida Panthers for Game 1 in the rematch. Does home ice matter at all for you, Rosie? Last year, it was the Panthers who had Game 1 and 2.
Yeah, I definitely do. Especially at the beginning and possibly end of the series, Game 1 and 2, and Game 7. That's where the home ice is an advantage. I think it's even more so in Edmonton. I just said the Leafs are the most passionate fan base in the league, and there's negativity in that passion. Don't get me wrong. They're not all support and sunshine and roses, especially with the last time they won the Stanley Cup being so long ago. But the Oilers are right there. They're just not as big. It's kind of confined to the Edmonton area for the most part, but they are raucous and they are rocking, and that barn is going to be insane. So to go into that for Game 1 and 2 after a big layoff, when everyone's kind of okay, like, snap to it, got to find our game again. Let's try to pick up where we left off. It's going to be tougher to do in that building for the Florida Panthers. We'll see if the Oil can take advantage. But yeah, and if this thing goes 7, which a lot of people are predicting it very well could, having that game, unlike last year, in Rogers Place there is going to be a benefit to them.
Yeah, I don't think it phases Florida. And I get what you're saying. I was there in the Cup Final last year, and they had the decibel meter up there, and I couldn't even hear myself think. Like, I couldn't believe that I covered a team where you can hear a person in Section 101 during a playoff game. And in Edmonton, I couldn't hear the person beside me. I got to give them credit. That building's going to be rocking. It's going to be going. But the Florida Panthers, in my opinion, the best road team. They just are fit to win. They know how to win. It's like they block everything out when they play playoff games. And I wonder if there's more pressure if you're the Oilers and you host a Game 7 because you're in front of your home crowd. Like, I almost think in 2025, athletes and teams prefer playing on the road as opposed to home. You don't really got to deal with as much, I think.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying with that. Like, if you're I mean, if you're going to grip your stick a little bit or be nervous,
We see it in Toronto all the time. They lose home games left and right in important spots, right?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, there's quite a palpable buzz around Toronto when there's a big home game, and in recent memory, they've kind of dropped the ball there with that type of thing. And like you said, the Panthers are very good on the road. If you're a team that's going on the road, you have to, be that dog to say, I don't give a rip how loud their crowd is, how loud it is when they score. You talk about, scoring a goal and, the crowd goes bananas and the big celly and you buzz by the bench. It takes the wind out of your sails if you're not that team, obviously. But the Cats are very good at saying, blocking out the noise, bringing their game regardless, taking a crowd out of it by scoring first or getting the momentum right off the bat. So it's just one of those things. It's not a deciding factor by any stretch, but there's a reason teams strive to win their division or be the top seed so they can play at home. I think it's an advantage to play at home, although it's not always perfect. It's not a perfect science. It's not like you're going to win the series because you have home ice. But
yeah,
I don't think there's anyone in the league who would openly say, no, I'd rather not have home ice advantage. I'd rather play the first two games and I'd rather play game 7 on the road. I don't think anyone would admit that.
Yeah, and I think from the Edmonton perspective and anybody who plays Florida, you want that last change. Any upper hand you get against half that Panthers roster, I think, was nominated or voted in the top 5 of the Selke Trophy. They're just so good defensively. Any edge you can get, any chance you can get to put McDavid and Draisaitl together and stack it up, you're going to do so. According to David Wilson here in the chat, cheapest tickets are $696 for tonight's game 1, Rosie. Holy shit.
Yeah. I got some buddies that are going down to Florida for game, I think 3 and 4. And I think, they're in kind of a box with food and booze or
that's sick,
whatever level you call it. But I think it's $1,600 a pop for those. It's not cheap. It's probably USD too, but I don't know. I guess I'm not surprised at the 600 for Rogers Place. I mean, that is a hot ticket. That building is unbelievable. And this is, you maybe once in a lifetime, but they did it last year. So We'll see. It's a hot ticket. There's some dough floating around and people with it want to spend it on something special like that.
I have a buddy who's a Leafs fan who decided he was going to go down to game 1 and 2 in Edmonton by himself. And maybe this guy's just fed up and just doesn't believe the Leafs will ever get there. But yeah, he's going to game 1 and 2 and he's a Leafs fan. And I guess he just wants a piece of that. He wants to see what it's like to see a Stanley Cup playoff game in a Canadian city with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and company. So looking forward to game 1 here tonight of the Stanley Cup Final. Florida and Edmonton, we're also 27 days away from July 1. Don't forget that. We're going to have a countdown, I think, on a daily basis going forward at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. I was thinking putting today's show together from a Leafs perspective or a Leafs fan perspective. What's the biggest reason I'd even want to tune into this Stanley Cup Final, aside from the CN Tower being lit blue and orange, of course?
So you don't want to tune into the thing, just
what would be your sell point? Let's say I'm just a Leafs fan. I couldn't care about Florida. I couldn't care about anybody but the Toronto Maple Leafs. What's your sell point? To me, it's watching Sam Bennett. I think he has been linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe I'm seeing the next future Toronto Maple Leaf. And the Connor McDavid factor would be a big thing for me too.
Well, just from a fan of hockey, I'm not so hardcore where you have to hate everyone and everything that isn't the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think that's silly. Yeah. This is such a great time of year for the NHL when the playoffs are on. I look forward to the playoffs all the time. And even when the Leafs are beat out, I still pay attention and watch. It's fun and it's exciting to watch, but you've got kind of history potentially being made. If you were a Leafs fan, would you not watch a minute of the 80s Oilers and all the stuff they did?
Of course, yeah.
You'd be an idiot not to watch that. Yeah. It's historic, it's unbelievably exciting, and it's just, you're learning, you're watching what it looks like. You can watch that series and analyze what do those teams look like that the Leafs don't have and try to figure out what that is.
That's true.
Watch other players that you could, envision on your roster, and then just sit back and be a fan and watch the excitement, see what happens. Look at the playoffs this year, Dallas, Winnipeg, and some of the overtime wins and the last second goals, and when the Oilers scored on themselves with 0.2 seconds
Yeah.
left. Like it's exciting as hell, man. I'm gonna watch every single game if I can.
Coming across the wire, Nikita Kucherov wins his second career Ted Lindsay Award, and some would argue this is a bigger award than the Hart Trophy because your peers, the NHLPA, vote on it. McKinnon and Cale Makar second and third, but that's a pretty big indictment on Nikita Kucherov, who weirdly still feels underrated in my world. I feel like because he's in Tampa, nobody really talks about how great he is.
I'm surprised he won.
Yeah.
Not surprised, but
that's a big one to win, man. When your peers vote on you and they're like, you're the sickest player in the league this year.
What's the wording for the Ted Lindsay Award? Just like the most outstanding player in the league, according to
the award is presented to the most outstanding player as voted by fellow members of the NHLPA.
Who, baby? Yeah, that's a huge one, man. That's in Hart category for sure. And hats off to him. That's pretty impressive. And I'm not surprised that those two monsters in Colorado are nipping at his heels there. That's just wild. A first round exit that I guess you could call surprising, especially when you saw how the Dallas Stars kind of limped out, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was like, hey, that's the rivalries they set up with this system with the wild card. You're going to get these monster matches in the first round with two teams who could very easily get to the Cup final. One of them's going to go home. And it's like, yeah, I guess I didn't totally see it as being those two players on that team, but okay, give Dallas its due. And then they kind of limped out and didn't have a whole hell of a lot in the Western Conference Finals. So again, kind of odd they were not a big piece of the playoffs this year, but those two are monsters.
Man, speaking of Dallas, Pete DeBoer sounds like his job could be on the line. And, my read was like he just came out full bore, so to speak. And if you recall the way it ended in Vegas, the Marc-Andre Fleury thing with the whole photo and the clip art. And now like he's hunted down Jake Ottinger after what transpired in Game 5. And you wonder if that's what's holding the Boston Bruins back from making their decision on their coach. There's a couple teams still remaining to pick: Pittsburgh, Boston, and it was widely perceived they were going to make their decisions early in the week. And here we are midweek and no decision. And we're all waiting for Pete DeBoer, Mr. 9-0 in Game 7. This would be my hire for the Maple Leafs. There's a guy who can win Game 7s. It's Pete DeBoer, dude.
Interesting. What did Tocchet get for money? Do you know the dollar figure for some of these recent coaches?
No clue.
It's monster money. It's
like a lot.
Big money.
Approaching $5 million, if not more than $5 million.
And if you have a 5-year contract and you get canned after 3 years, is that guaranteed money, or does that you still make that, right?
I believe, dude. It's like even MSG, who owns the Knicks and the Rangers, just canned two coaches in 7 days or whatever, like in a month, right? Because Laviolette went out with the Rangers, then Thibodeau just went out with the Knicks. They went to the conference final, and then they're like, "No, you're not good enough." These teams love paying guys not to coach for them.
Yeah, I guess 5 times 5.25 for Tocchet, so that's like a monster contract. And
nice.
DeBoer is going to get a job if he's double dipping somewhere. Maybe he's like, hell, I could make $7 or $8 million next year on top of whatever. I don't know if his contract's up or not, but I don't know. He was pretty hard on old Ottinger there, and I
love coaches who hate goalies. I'm just going to put it out there. I can't stand the volatility of the crease, dude. You don't know if these guys are going to show up. When they do show up, are they going to make a save?
There's no benefit to taking the confidence or creating friction to your franchise goalie with like multi years.
He's got
still
8
on
years
contract with your organization. I think even if you're frustrated or you think a certain thing, you got to bite your tongue a little bit, and he didn't. And then he had time to cool off to an extent when he did his presser and he like doubled down on Ottinger, like, who doggy? And I don't know if there's some friction there, if there will be a change made. Sometimes I think it's silly. It's you're firing a coach for the sake of firing a coach who's not the problem. I don't know. We're going to watch, though. He definitely got himself in the conversation.
At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Neglected to mention today's guest from the Toronto Sun. Steve Simmons is going to drop by in about 5 minutes here. Good to pick his brain on what this team and franchise does doing forward. He's been around for a big chunk of the last 2 decades or so here, Rosie.
He is a hot guest, likes to stir the pot and get people talking. So we'll see if we can do that ourselves with old Stevie Simmons.
Any thoughts on the rumor mill, I like to call it, but Elliot Friedman saying yes. So we're going to hear these things daily now. There's not much cooking in Leafs Nation as we get closer and closer to the draft and free agency. But I guess he went on Fan 590, said Vegas makes a lot of sense for Marner. He also listed Utah as a team to watch. Friedman also mentioned he thinks Bennett's likely to stay in Florida. And then Chris Johnson on the Chris Johnson show, Carolina, Chicago expected to make some of the biggest offers for Mitch Marner money wise. So if you're keeping score at home, I think half the league is after Mitch Marner. I mean, this is playing perfectly for the Marner camp, isn't it?
Well, and they knew it. That's why they, I think that's why they don't want to do a sign and trade. I think that's why they want to just, close themselves off from everything and get to free agency and let those offers roll. It's a special time for a player, especially of that caliber, when you've got a body of work behind you and you still have, many good years ahead of you to go to UFA and just say, I want to step into that free agency on July 1 and just see what my worth is, see what my value is, see what people are willing to offer me and say to me. It's kind of an exciting time, and I think everyone kind of deserves to do that. I don't knock Mitch for doing that. I wonder what his legacy will be if he does leave the Leafs high and dry, as there sounds like multiple options and avenues to go about it, where he did go and get his money and become a part of a different franchise, but didn't leave his hometown Maple Leafs high and dry, and he chose to sidestep all of those. So it's going to be interesting, but obviously exciting time for him and his camp.
I would just love to know from the Maple Leafs perspective what their war room looks like as we get closer and closer to free agency. Like, do you think they map out various iterations of what the team could look like? Like, I know a lot of general managers have like those the sticky names where you can put it on a board and plug them in. Yeah, the magnets. That's the word I was looking for. The magnets that you can plug in and out. I wonder if the Maple Leafs have like different variations of that. Like, do they have a lineup with Marner in it, Marner out of it, plugging guys left and right? Like, I think it'd be cool to get the behind the scenes look at that.
For sure they do. It'd be awesome. I've seen it in the, like, sometimes you do like a little meeting or something and you're looking, or in the coach's room, and you look at the magnet board and you're like, where the hell, why am I down in the bottom right corner with the chalk? But it would be fun to play that game, and you'd have your cap crunchers there saying this is possible, this isn't, this contract, and it's just, you're playing the game of jumping through hoops and sidestepping no move clauses and UFA, all kinds of things. It'd be a lot of fun.
And certainly we expect this Maple Leafs team to look a lot different in, say, the next month. The following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian-owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. As we bring in today's guest from the Toronto Sun, it is Steve Simmons. What's going on, Steve? How are you?
Very well. Enjoying the beautiful weather for a change.
Yeah, I know. And we're also, you're right, because Rosie lives out in Alberta and it's really damn nice. And here it's been so cold. But I won't lie, we started the conversation on today's show talking about the CN Tower. They're lighting it blue and orange. Do you have any issue with that as a Torontonian?
No. First of all, Connor McDavid is basically a Torontonian, if you want to call it that. And Zach Hyman is a Torontonian, and Connor Brown is a Torontonian. So, if you don't have a certain affinity for the Edmonton Oilers, and I do it because I watched all these kids play when they were playing minor hockey in the GTHL. And so for me, it's like watching your own kids graduate to the next stage and then, hopefully bring back a Stanley Cup.
Interesting stuff. All right, Steve, we're starting the final tonight with two juggernaut teams. What's your thought process on these two teams, and how do you relate to the Maple Leafs from the hockey you've seen from these two? How far away are they from being one of those teams?
Well, I think what we've seen is that there are two teams that have separated themselves from everyone else. The conference finals were not very competitive, and they were not close in any way. There was separation between the teams almost from the minute the series began. Edmonton looked much better than Dallas, and Florida looked much better than Carolina. And so I think we're looking at a time where there are two elite teams right now in the NHL, and then everyone else is, fighting for whatever the scraps that come next are. And I think there's a lot of teams that are, I'll call them uncertain, teams that maybe on paper look good or on the ice don't look so good. But to me, I am very appreciative. I spent a lot of time in Florida in the winter. And so I watched the Florida Panthers probably more than any other team other than the Leafs. And I'm hugely impressed with what they do and how they do it. And I'm incredibly impressed with Edmonton being able to overcome, the goaltending situation there and the, at times, defensive play of the back end situation there, and still find ways when you have the two best players in the world on one team, it changes things. But I think it's a whole shaking out process after 1 and 2. It's like who's 3, who's 4, who's 5. That's a subjective thing, especially now when you don't know what the rosters are for next season. But I wrote a column the other day, and the premise was that of the teams that aren't in the finals, who's better than the Maple Leafs? And to be honest, I can't come up with one team that I say is better. There's a lot of teams that are kind of the same and are all in sort of caught in this vortex of we're not sure where we are or where we're going, but we need to get better while doing that. And I think that's where the Leafs are, and that's where Dallas is, and that's where Vegas is, and that's where Colorado is, and you can run through, the entire league, and I think the East is weaker than the West, and so that's changed a bit over the past few years. But the two teams that are back for the second year in a row, wouldn't be surprised if they're back for the third year come next year. Because I don't see either of these teams. Maybe Florida, if they lose Ekblad, will that'll hurt them. But I don't know who's losing people, who in Edmonton's going. That's going to change that roster, especially when 1 and 2 are there. And if 1 and 2 are there, then you always have a chance.
Steve, do you buy the Sam Bennett to Toronto hype?
Not really, to be honest. All winter long, and I think I've asked Sam this question at least 4 or 5 times. He wants to stay with the Panthers. He wants to stay in Florida. Now it's the old salary cap. Can we make it work? Does this add up? What are you willing to pay a 50-point guy who is uber invaluable come playoff time? Mm-hmm. And he's unique. He's an interesting guy, because how many guys have been like that over the years? Not very many. Not very many 50-point players have been that valuable when it mattered. Mm-hmm. And I remember the Leafs lost to Florida 2 years ago. And at the end of the series, a scouting friend of mine said, if for one game, if you could have Mitch Marner or Sam Bennett, who would you pick? And we both agreed, and the answer was Sam Bennett. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to pay Sam Bennett more than you pay Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is going to get you 90 to 100 points. Bennett's going to get you 50. But for that one game you have to win, guess what? He's the guy you're going to want on your roster.
And maybe that's the kind of thing to my next question, but Brad Treliving's postseason presser, he mentioned needing to change the DNA of the team. And it kind of reminded me of they need more killer instinct, which has been said in the past. What does that mean as you watch these two teams who have separated themselves from the league? You need to change the Leafs DNA, which I do think that they're close, as you mentioned. Like who's a lot better than them that isn't these two teams? What is that thing that they need to change in your mind?
Well, I heard this from another hockey friend of mine. Is you have to go into the corner and then go in with purpose and go in with anger. And it's not just go and get the puck. It's the simplest thing. Winning puck battles. It's a nice term, but Jay, you were in there battling. You got to go in and you got to win those fights. And when you win those fights, then you start owning the game. And I think that's when they're talking DNA. They're talking about how the Leafs lost, and I'm still baffled by it. Frankly, they are absolutely horrendous in Game 5 at home. makes no sense to me at all as an observer of this for the last 45 years. How can you not be prepared to play that game or be ready to compete to the level your opponent is competing? So they have that awful game, and then they go to Florida, and then they have like the perfect road game. You could not have drawn it up any better than they did for Game 6. I mean, they just limited the Panthers' chances, and their best players were their best players, and all kinds of good things happened. So now you go to Game 7, and you think, okay, Game 5 sucked. Game 6 was terrific. You're now going home for Game 7. Stuff should at least be, I'm not saying you're being favored to win. You're never going to be favored to win against the champion, but you should be able to compete in that ring. They come out horrendous to start the game. 10 of the worst minutes you can have. And then all of a sudden, it tilted. And for the next 10 minutes, they were playing very well. They were playing the kind of hockey they need to play to succeed. So I'm thinking, you're going into your dressing room at 0-0. The period's over. You should be feeling pretty good about yourselves. You weathered the storm. Reminded me of the old days when teams would go into Chicago and you say, you got to get through the first 10 minutes and then you'll be okay. Well, the Leafs had to get through the first 10 minutes at home, and then they seemed to be okay. And then they came out for the second period, and they were worse than they were for the first. So when Tree Living's talking about changing the DNA, I'd like to know from Coach Craig Berube, what in the hell was going on then in his mind and in his dressing room? And what was he saying? And I don't believe that coaches say things that impact games between periods. I've been around long enough. I don't believe much of that stuff. I think players get themselves ready to play, and they should be the ones responsible for their play. And from the moment the second period started, the Leafs disappeared. And they didn't just disappear, they disappeared really bad. The old line from Saturday night, that's not right, live, SCTV, they blew up real good. And then that's what happened. And that's why they didn't just lose in 7 games to Florida, because there could have been honor in losing in 7 games to Florida. But there's not honor when you're blown away in games 5 and 7 at home, when you have opportunities to put yourself in position to move on to only halfway to a Stanley Cup. It's not like you're moving on to the Cup. You're moving on to another round to win before you can get a chance to win the Cup. And so when he talks about changing DNA, I think he wants more players who, when they go into a corner, when they fight for the puck, and when they're taking care of ice, and when they're not turning it over in bad positions and in bad places, making bad pinches, all of the things you can add up to what the Leafs did wrong. I think Brad Treliving, he gets a lot of grief, but I think he's done a really good job in the year. And I think he really understands what he has and what he needs to do. And I kind of thank him for the honesty that he showed in his year-end presser, because most GMs, blame it on me, or, they throwaway lines. He didn't give any throwaway lines. He basically said, I don't like this team the way it's currently constructed, and we're going to change it.
Yeah, and I sincerely feel like this team is on the right path, and I haven't felt that way for a long period of time. And I'm right there with you. It's just the massive swings in consistency that makes no sense. Where one game you're unbelievable, the next game you no-show. And we talked all season long about home ice, how it was integral, important. And game 5 and 7, they shit themselves. But I want to get your opinion on the interpretation of what was said around everybody from Berube to Pelly, to obviously Tree Living, regarding the futures of 2 big bona fide stars in this team, Mitch Marner and John Tavares. Do you foresee both back, one back, or none back here?
Well, I don't think Mitch Marner's coming back. And I think that's frankly both his decision, his team's decision, and the Leafs' decision. And I think the belief was that you could run if you want to call it the core 4, whatever you want to say, you could run those guys for so many years, but there came a point where you couldn't anymore. And this is the point where you can't anymore. And so now what can you turn Mitch Marner's $11 million, or the 13 maybe you were going to pay him, into something else? Where does that $13 million go? And how do you make that work for you? In Tavares' case, I think it's a little different. He's an older guy. He wants to play here. I think they can get him on the cheap. I wouldn't give him $1 more than $4 million. And I just say, John, take it or leave it if that's what you want. And I would hope that he would morph into your third line center.
Mm-hmm.
And you find someone, I'll throw Sam Bennett's name out there because it's convenient. Someone who can move into that second line spot and make your team better. But I think it's to the point where the group, the four guys up front, Morgan Riley included, been here an awfully long time. They've been through a lot of different playoff incarnations and a lot of challenges and problems. And people look at, sort of the 9 years as being all one lump. I don't look at it that way. Year one, as a bunch of rookies, they made the playoffs, and they not only that, they did it and played awfully well against a very good Washington Capitals team. That if it wasn't for Freddie Anderson, I think they would have won the series. So a bunch of kids came out like gangbusters first time in the playoffs. Then they had 2 season series with Boston, who was clearly a better team. And they won 7 games both times against the Bruins. So the early years, they almost overachieved at playoff time. It was when, okay, now you're into year 4. It started badly when it was Montreal and Columbus. And I don't remember the order of which. It was one then the other. When they just, shit the bed, basically. And they've been sort of going back and forth from there on since. And so you can't keep repeating and doing the same things over and over again and expect to succeed. Brendan Shannon always said, well, I didn't win the Stanley Cup till my 10th year. Or Yzerman didn't win till this year. Or Ovechkin didn't win till that year. Yeah, it's true. But they didn't keep the same group of people together all the time. And the other difference is that all of those teams that Shanahan would reference, they all had playoff success of some kind. They all had years where they went 2 or 3 rounds. They all had years where they kind of pushed the envelope a little bit. They weren't one and done every year. And so when you're one and done way too often, and you're in the best division in hockey, which doesn't help, look at Florida's been to the final how many times, and Tampa before that, and Boston before that, and the Atlantic Division, even Montreal. The road to the Stanley Cup is through the Atlantic Division, except not through one city in the Atlantic Division that cares more about hockey than all the other places in the Atlantic Division.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of Toronto, the cost of living, the taxes we pay in this country, it's a hot topic right now, talking about free agent signings and that being a determining factor, giving an advantage to states like Florida and Texas to get these big guys. Do you buy into that? Do you think that's a problem? Do you think the league will address it? Or is that not really something that you think is important?
Well, I was told by the head of the NHL Players Association that this will not even be discussed in anything to do with a collective bargaining agreement. I think it's one of the great non-issues of all time. The largest free agent signing in the history of professional sport, Shohei Ohtani. Where did he sign? California. Where do they have the highest state taxes? California. The second largest signing in the history of pro sports, Juan Soto. Where did he sign? New York. New York's taxes, pretty similar to Canadian taxes. So, all of this stuff, you look at the Florida Panthers. Why are the Florida Panthers great? Because, first of all, Dale Talon sort of set a base when he was the GM and brought in some terrific players, Barkov and Bobrovsky and Ekblad. And then he lost his job, and Bill Zito has just been gangbusters as general manager. He got Reinhart for next to nothing. He got Bennett for next to nothing. He picked up one of the best defensemen in all of hockey on waivers in Gustav Forsling. We're talking about a top 10 NHL defenseman on waivers. So you go through the acquisitions that they've made, gave up nothing for Reinhart, gave up nothing for Bennett. He's on a run. And then this year he left money available. Who'd he get? Seth Jones. Who's been better as a pickup this season than Seth Jones? Everything Bill Zito's done. I don't know Bill very well, but I am so impressed with the job that he's done. And don't tell what's any of that had to do with taxes, except when he signs a guy after the fact. So maybe when he signs Reinhardt on the next contract, or when whoever signs the next contract gets a little less money because there's no state taxes. But as for free agents, who are the free agents that have gone to those places because of taxes? I can't tell you. And many. And you look at any of the other sports. The Miami Dolphins aren't very good. The Miami Marlins are terrible. Tampa Bay Rays aren't very good. You can go through all of these supposed, the Texas Rangers won the World Series 2 years ago, but didn't make the playoffs last year and aren't very good right now. You can run through all these states. There's no correlation between low tax states and success in postseason.
I suspect the gripe would be the salary cap, though, right? I think that's the contentious part of the whole thing is the salary cap. When you can get somebody for dirt cheap and put them with the salary cap, it's a lot different, no?
Well, you can, again, if you're smart and you do it properly. So much of salary cap is, when do you sign a person? At what point in their career? At what point, do you sign them early? Do you sign them late? Do you wait to the end? One thing that I'll use the Maple Leafs as an example because it's the one I'm most familiar with. They overpaid virtually every player that they signed in a 5-7 year period. They overpaid Matthews. They overpaid Marner. They overpaid Tavares. They overpaid everybody. So that had nothing to do with taxes. That had something to do with crappy management. And not only did they overpay them, they gave them all no movement clauses. So, there's ways of doing I'll take Jim Nill as an example. I don't care what state he's in. I don't care what team he's with. Jim Nill's top 3 general manager in the NHL. He's going to do a good job because he's that. There's no tax breaks playing in Winnipeg. Winnipeg Jets had the best record in the NHL, and you look at Scheifele's underpaid by NHL standards, and Hellebuck's underpaid by NHL standards, and Connor's underpaid by NHL standards because they set a way of doing business. I'll go back to Lou Lamoriello or Harry Sinden or great general managers over the years. When Lamoriello had the Devils, Martin Brodeur made X. Nobody on the team was making $1 more than him. That was the rule. Detroit Red Wings had Nick Lidstrom. Nobody on the team was making $1 more than Nick Lidstrom. So going in that whoever you were, you weren't getting what you might have got somewhere else. So a lot of it has to do with internal. And this is before, in some cases, it's before there was even a salary cap. Mm-hmm. It's because teams still operated with budgets. A team budget is no different than a salary cap. If the GM's told I can only spend $42 million, then you could only spend $42 million. And so that's how all the teams operated. But Harry Sinden had the Ray Bourque rule. Ray Bourque makes the most. No one makes $1 more. Didn't matter who else came along that was coming. It just worked that way.
And talking about these free agents and these signings, to change the DNA of this, you talk about getting in a second line center that could provide depth if you bump John Tavares down, if you can get him at a good AAV. Who do you think that guy is? Is there anyone in free agency that checks that box, or do they have to get creative here and relieve someone from cap pressure or do something more creative?
Well, I think there's a better chance of it being trade than it is free agent signing if Sam Bennett's not available and Sam Bennett's not available to you. Because if Sam Bennett is available, it's probably going to be 15 teams, probably looking at trying to sign him. That doesn't mean you're going to be, even though he's from Holland Marsh, may not. Some guys don't want to go home. Some guys love to play at home. Some guys don't want to play at home. It depends who you are and how you feel and what your relationship is to your family and your parents and your friends and where your wife is from. And there's all kinds of issues involved, as you well know, with free agency. Not just where do I want to play. There's a lot of other things involved with that. I think Brad Treliving is going to have to get creative. And I go back to Cliff Fletcher was one of the best traders in NHL history. If you go make a list of the players he traded for, it's an incredible list. Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer. But what he used to do is he used to find, I'll use Joey Mullen as an example. He used to find a Joey Mullen who St. Louis couldn't afford to pay on the next contract. and he would then go and make a deal for Joey Mullen, and he'd pay him what, because Calgary was able to pay more in those circumstances. And so what Treelingamy has to do is you got to research every single team in the league and every single contract. Where are there contracts that don't work? I mean, Logan Cooley, for example, is asked to be traded out of the Utah. Is it the Utah Mammoths? Still embarrassed to say that. He's one of the greatest mammoths. He's one of the greatest mammoths ever.
I know.
He's 22 years old, and he had 60-some points. And he's obviously going to be better than that. You know, what's it going to take to get him in a deal? Where does he fit in? Or that? And so you have to go team to team. I think he's going to have to get creative. And you're not going to get an $11 million player to replace your $11 million player. You may get a 7 and a 4. You may get a 6 and a 5. There's different ways of looking at it. And you have to find people who play the kind of game that you want your team to play. And so there's a bunch of factors here. And, you know, I think Brad and his staff and his, you know, he's fortunate. He's got like 5,000 people working for him. So, you know, everybody can focus in. You know, you can put 10 people on each team in the league to do a deep dive into who's there, what's their contract situation, what's their value, how much, you know, are they players that they're happy with? You know, you can find those guys. And you know, look at the Buffalo Sabres of 5 years ago. They had Sam Reinhart. Didn't want him. They had Brandon Montour. Didn't want him. They had Jack Eichel. Didn't want him. Well, they all have Stanley Cup rings now. And, you know, Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs in, 150 years? And so, you know, you also could focus on, you know, management that you think isn't as strong or as sharp as you might be. And I think there's something to be said for that too. And so, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge to try and fix everything. But I think he doesn't have to worry about goaltending, and he doesn't have to worry about his defense. And I think he can just focus in on those 3 or 4 spots he needs to focus in up front. And hopefully he's able to put together something that makes sense, and someone who can come in and play Craig Berube style, you know, and there's a certain challenge to that as well. You know, that's, as the Florida Panthers players will tell you, and I think this is why they were 10th in the league, I think standings wise this year. It's not fun to play their style of hockey every night. You can't do it. You try and do that over 82 games, you know, you'll be in a coffin by about March. And so, you know, you have to, you know, the beauty of Florida is they have enough veteran guys to understand this is who we are, this is how we play, and we'll see you in April. But the Leafs need to find some guys who can bring that in November and December and January to show the other guys. And I'm going to put Austin Matthews on the list of other guys to show the other guys what you need to do to compete. You know, having talent is a wonderful gift. It's a wonderful thing to have. But having talent, if you're not willing to give everything of yourself, you know, there's an old thing from boxing gyms. Wasted talent is the oldest story in boxing. You used to see it on the walls of gyms. And every once in a while, when I watch Matthews in the playoffs, sometimes I think, you know, here's an example of, you know, a guy with an immense talent, but he's not able to be Sam Bennett come playoff time.
Well, I could tell you Brock Nelson's not going to be a guy they pick up and add to this roster, because he just re-signed with the Colorado Avalanche, 3 years at $7.5 million. And it'll be interesting to see what this team and Brad Treliving does over the next couple of weeks. Steve, can't thank you enough for your time today, and I really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it, guys. Be well.
Thanks,
Thank you as well. That's Steve Simmons of the Toronto Sun breaking it down for us. And that's the reality too, Rosie. Like, just because you want to address your center ice position, I think it puts more heat now on the Leafs, especially somebody like Brock Nelson, who I've been told for months the Leafs would probably target in free agencies no longer available. Like, it puts maybe more heat to re-sign Tavares and bring him back here.
Yeah, one of those guys that was an option is now gone, and that's only going to become more of a theme the longer that the time ticks away here. There's not just you can't just like you listen to some of these shows and they're just like, well, tree living just needs to, and it's like you can't like work harder and come up with more players to be available. You know what I mean? Like I get Steve. He's talking about, crunch every contract and get people on to start sifting through the sand and finding someone that other people aren't looking for. And maybe something will rise to light. I'm all about that. I think Tree Living needs to be creative here with some of the things he needs to do. Find somebody that needs to get rid of a contract or create cap space and make some kind of a creative offer that, someone can't say no to. And it checks a bunch of boxes for your own organization, but inevitably there's going to be more and more people picked off here that could be suitors. And I just worry that this year in particular, I wish it was next year's class of free agents because there's thicker pickings there. We will see, but it was interesting with Steve. Say what you want about him, he's been controversial in the past, but I don't think he said anything that I disagreed with. And especially at the beginning and towards the end of that conversation, what do these two teams do that are still playing hockey right now that the Leafs don't? And it is that get mad and have a chip on your shoulder and go dig that friggin' puck out and just be a dog and play with some emotion and just refuse. And again, I it's hard to put that type of play into words and describe it really well because you just know it when you see it. But the Leafs in those games 5s and 6s or 7s is exactly when you need to see that kind of play, and they have fucking none of it, man. It is that I really agree with him. I believe that is exactly what Tree Living's talking about when he says we need a DNA change.
It's revolting. That's probably the best word right now I can use to describe what we saw in Game 5. Yeah, Game 5 and Game 7, just revolting stuff. And it's just the swings and consistency. I brought it up there in the interview, so thank you to Steve for dropping by today at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It's time now for the crispy hot take of the day, presented by the Ninja Crispy 4-in-1 portable glass air fryer.
Meet the first of its kind, the Ninja Crispy portable cooking system. The power of a full-sized air fryer in the palm of your hand, so you can cook big or small batches. Just prep it, crisp it, serve it, and store it all in one.
I was going to ask you chewing gum during the show?
First time ever. It feels kind of weird. Is it smacky?
No, it's just like I've never seen somebody chew gum during a show. No, you don't have to spit it out. I was just like, I wasn't sure. That's sick.
Seems to have struck a nerve with you, Nick.
It didn't strike a nerve. I was just asking. Would you put that in your portable glass air fryer?
I wouldn't recommend it, but I did feel a little smacky at the end there. So
I thought you killed it. Great questioning too. But I wanted to mention as well. Go ahead.
I didn't see the hot take on. I didn't see the crispy air fryer ninja.
Oh, this is going to be news to you. I got a whole read, and then we'll get to it. Okay.
Oh God. Okay, go on with this. Another read for this one. Okay.
It's all-in-one system. It includes 4-quart, 6-cup Tupperware glass containers and 2 storage lids. The Ninja Crispy is thermal shock resistant and go from frozen to crispy in minutes. With the Crispy Power Pod, you get the power of a full-size air fryer in the palm of your hands. The 4-quart container fits 4 pounds of chicken or veggies. Cook a personal-sized meal in 7 minutes in the 6-cup container. Max Crisp, bake, air fry, and recrisp with the Ninja Crispy. You can prep, cook, and store anything from crispy favorites to one-dish meals. Don't forget, we got the ongoing promotion right now. We're giving away one of these over the next couple weeks. To be eligible to win, all you got to do is head on over to an Instagram page at TLNDC to find our contest sign-up. After that, follow at Ninja Crispy Canada and reply with what kind of dish you'd like to cook in your Ninja Crispy. Contest available to Canadian residents only and will end on June 6th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Does that work for you, Rosie?
Wowzers, made me hungry again, just like it does every day, ready for my lunch. But it leads me to, is it producer Vic's Crispy Ninja hot take of the day again?
It's always producer Vic. This is his segment to shine. He's got some hot takes, and today's hot take is pretty scorching damn hot. So according to producer Vic, if the Leafs really want to make a significant upgrade up front, they need to consider moving one of their goalies this summer. How do you feel about that, Rosie?
I get where that comes from because we are one of those teams, as of last year with Swayman and Ullmark. It's like, who do you play? Who's your number one? Is this a benefit or not? My only problem with that, and I get what he's saying, and it would be, Joseph Woll is younger than Anthony Stolarz. I think Anthony Stolarz played better this year than Woll. Woll is more prone to injury, although Stolarz was also injured. So it's kind of like, what are we getting here? But my problem is you don't usually get very much for goaltenders, right? Like, you think someone's going to solve your problem because you're offering them Joseph Woll. I mean, what's the return for that? I think that's where that shopping would be difficult, but I'm honestly, I don't think it hurts anyone to shop anyone and everyone. I would love nothing more than if I knew Tree Living was leaving no stone unturned from now until the start of next year, as far as options to make this team better and bring in some of those players. They're going to have more of that during the playoffs that we've been so longly lacking.
I agree with you. I disagree on the goalie front. I think teams are always desperate to find goalies who can actually make a save, and I think teams will tend to overpay. And I'm right there with you. If you can't trade Matthews, you can't trade Nylander, Riley will not waive his no trade, then who are you trading? You can weaponize your cap space, and maybe you can flip a pick to take on a contract and imagine it that way. But I think from an asset standpoint, you don't want to trade Easton Cowan. Maybe Danford. You got no picks. You have to look at your crease, like, just by process of elimination. And I think if there's a team out there who's willing to give you a really, really good player in return, or somebody that addresses a need on your roster, I think you have to think long and hard about it. And we're going to have that convo around the summer about Anthony Stolarz. He'll be 1 year away from UFA. How do you pay this guy? Do you pay this guy? He was great this year, has been great for the last couple of years, but I actually think it's a really good hot take from producer Vic today. Job well done.
They usually are. What to me, I'm like, what about like a Brendan Carlo? I mean, I realize we just gave up assets for him, but if you can get that 2C from somebody, I mean, how many people want a defense? Like, our defense is really solid. Do you think it got that much better with Carlo? Like,
I
they're
do.
in a pretty good spot back there, yeah? That would be something that would really entice someone that would bring in that 2C that's really over the moon and actually change the look of this hockey team. Lots of different options. Like I said, I'd like to see any stone, no stone left unturned.
The big one with Carlo too is like the retention. I think he's making 3.9 for the next 2 years, man. That is value. I'm a big Brandon Carlo guy. That's why I got excited when they picked him up. I thought he was really good. I thought he made Morgan Riley better. He's not the guy I would pluck, but you're right. Like, there's just not many assets right now, I think, on this roster or trade wise when it comes to draft picks. And so that's why Steve was bringing up the fact they got to be creative, and that they do. If it's not going to be free agency, what's it going to look like from the Maple Leafs perspective? Want to get in the action for Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365. They got you from game props, player props, totals, and the money line. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, visit ConnexOntario.ca. Simple bet for me tonight. Game 1, Cup Final. I think the Oilers start with conviction. Give me the Oilers in regulation tonight in Game 1 against the Panthers.
Oh, doggy. They're going to start off hot, you think, eh? I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Again, being at home, I think if they can feed off that fan buzz that is going to be in that new building, it will be amazing. I am personally taking the over in the game. I think these teams are going to be scoring goals. They're going to be fresh. They're going to have energy. They're going to feel as healthy as they have in months. They're going to be buzzing, and I just wonder about Stuardo Skinner, and when he takes some time off, like when he gets hot, and he can go through adversity, and he has been incredible. I am totally understanding of that, but to take this big break, he's the one guy who I'm like, what's he going to come out like tonight? And if he's not at his best, we know how those goals can start to rack up. I'm just taking the over in this game.
Shane Brom writes in, put $2,500 on the Oilers to win this series. Okay, somebody is confident.
Wowza, I like it. Wow, he wants to pay that man his money. That's an exciting bet, sir.
Yes, sir. And Rosie, will leave it at that. Carter Hutton in the mix tomorrow. We're going to have former Winnipeg Jets captain Blake Wheeler, who's doing some media work, drop by the show and give his thoughts on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that's coming up tomorrow. You're back on Friday. Later on today, you and I are going to spend some time with fresh off a Mem Cup victory and MVP Easton Cowan, right?
Eastonius flying high right now, I imagine. Yeah, we'll get him on and ask him a little bit about his recent experience, which I'm sure has been very positive for him. So we're looking forward to that, and we will air it on Friday, I believe.
Yes. Why don't we, the CN Tower, maybe put Knights green and Knights yellow? Just I don't want to see
that would make more sense.
Yeah.
That would make more sense. Congrats to the Lundo Knights on their Memorial Cup. Make some green and white or yellow or whatever. That makes more sense than a team out in a different conference. Oh my God, I do not like that at all. That kind of pissed me off.
Bizarro World, we have that convo, I think, once a year when there's a Canadian team. I think they did it last year. I think they did it with Montreal. No thanks. I don't like the kumbaya shit, but we'll wrap there. Again, Hutton back in the mix tomorrow at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You guys in the chat were excellent today. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit leafsnation.com. Thank you to producer Vic. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. Talk tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.